There's a version of stress that every business owner carries, and it's not something that you can kind of point to on a calendar. It's not a bad month or a lost client or a crew call out. It's quieter than that. It's the constant low hum of knowing that everything, every decision, every fire, every question that nobody else can answer still runs through you. Welcome back to Brickonomics, the business of building. I'm your host, Nick Scroggs, and this episode is about a distinction that I think almost every builder eventually has to face, whether they want to or not. Do you own a business, or are you an employee of a business that you own? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If you're still the thing holding your company together, if nothing moves without you, nothing gets decided without you, nothing gets fixed without you, you're not a business owner yet. You're an employee of a business that you happen to own. And a particularly exhausted one, I might add. You've got the title of owner, but none of the freedom that's supposed to come with it. No real weekends, no real vacations, no real security, because the second that you stop showing up, the whole thing stops running. And here's the part that stings a little. Somewhere out there is somebody with your exact same skill set, your trade knowledge, your work ethic, your eye for a job done right, who's working for somebody else right now, making great money, punching out at 5, sleeping fine, and not carrying any of that you're carrying. So what's the difference? Why do this at all if you're just going to end up just as trapped as an employee, except now you're the one that's worrying about everybody else's paychecks as well? The only honest answer is this. Owning a business is only worth more than working for one if the business becomes something bigger than your own labor. If it can eventually run, grow, and hold value without you standing in the middle of it, holding it all up. That's the line between being an employee of your own company and becoming an actual entrepreneur. I think a lot of builders carry this realization quietly, like it's a personal failure, but this isn't a construction problem. It's probably not even a you problem. It happens to everybody who builds something that outgrows them. I remember a specific moment that helped me understand this better than any book that I've read. I was at the gym talking with a new friend, and he'd mentioned that he'd recently exited his own business. He was in healthcare. He ran a physician practice with partners, and as he started telling me about it, I realized that I wasn't just listening to a healthcare story. I was listening to my own story told in a different language. He talked about the moment that he had to stop thinking like a physician and start thinking like a business owner. How those were two completely different jobs wearing the same title. He talked about competing ideas with his partners over how the practice should actually operate, who the service was really for, and where the owner's best time was spent. And he talked about the shift that mattered most. After years of working in the business, he switched to working on it, building it instead of just staffing it. And that's what eventually made it something that he could sell. Now, I'm a builder and he was a physician. Neither of us has ever poured a foundation or diagnosed a patient in each other's world. And yet the conversations were seamless because the arc was identical. The same growing pains, the same reluctant handoffs, the same eventual reckoning with what actually makes a business valuable. It didn't matter what we were building. The process of building it followed the same shape. This is documented territory too, not just something that the two of us stumbled on separately. Business researchers have studied this exact pattern for decades, but honestly, that gym conversation taught me more about how universal this is than any research ever could. There is a common arc that every growing business walks, no matter the industry. It's not a rigid formula, it's not a checklist, just a shape that you start to recognize once you've lived it. I lived mine one seat at a time, year over year, and now I got to watch it play out almost beat for beat in a completely different industry. When I started this business with my dad, my background was about as different from his as it could be. He'd spent his life around small family owned businesses that he ran, and that was the model that he knew. I came in fresh out of an MBA program with a deliberate goal: build something that didn't need to live inside my head to function. From day one, I wanted out of the center of it all, even before there was much of anything to be the center of. And that sounds good in theory, but in practice, the early years don't really care what your goals are. In the early days, I was doing the books, making phone calls, going on sales calls, writing estimates, and closing deals because there was nobody else to do it. My dad was mostly on the production side, project managing and supervising jobs in the field. Between the two of us, we were the whole company. We were sales, we were admin, and we were production. If it needed to happen, one of us was going to be doing it personally. As the business grew, we added a design division, and that became a bigger part of what I was personally doing. While I was running sales and estimating, I was also coordinating with our internal designers and outside partners to actually put together projects before they broke ground. For a long stretch, that coordination sat entirely with me because there wasn't a clean handoff yet. I was doing the estimates, the sales calls, the pre construction coordination all at once, and it worked, but was a lot to hold on to in one person's hands. One thing worth mentioning here: if it's your instinct, like mine, to get out of every seat as fast as possible, the owner is usually the best salesperson in the business, and sales is often the right seat to hold on to for the longest. It's the easiest place in the entire company to build trust with the client because you're talking to the person whose name is actually on the door. I stayed in that seat a long time on purpose, and even while I was actively trying to get other things off my plate. As we got bigger and added more projects, the time it took to do all those jobs meant that new seats would slowly but organically form. Seats that would eventually fill a full 40-hour work week. My goal was always to define those seats and hand them off to others. Sometimes I did a great job, and those seats were well defined and handed off cleanly. Other times, responsibilities just kept stacking up onto me as the owner until something forced the issue. For me, that something happened one time in particular on a production side of the business, not on the sales side, and it ended up solving a few problems all at once. Once you've grown to the point of needing another salesperson or being out of the sales side entirely yourself, the next stage in development doesn't feel much like progress. It actually kind of feels like things are falling apart, even though the business is actually growing. One of our earliest job site supervisors was a family friend, somebody who'd owned his own small business before coming on with us, and he'd been running job sites for us for years while we grew significantly. And he was good at it because he had an owner's instinct for just making things happen. In those early years, that's exactly what our business model needed. Supervisors had real autonomy because neither my dad nor I had the bandwidth to manage how the work got done, only whether the client was happy at the end of it. And because we'd hired good enough people, that was good enough. Clients were happy, and that was the whole scoreboard. Then my dad stepped back from supervising jobs himself and moved into managing the team of supervisors directly. That gave him real oversight for the first time, and with that oversight came the urge to systemize what had, until then, essentially been the Wild West. We started building processes out of what had already been several different people's individual ways of getting things done, and picking which approach was actually the best. To somebody who had built his whole career on autonomy, that didn't feel like progress. It felt like being second guessed for things that had always worked, and truthfully, a lot of what it was management by hindsight. We were reverse engineering a process out of instincts that had previously never needed to be written down, and he got worn down by it. We came close to losing him entirely. At the last moment, saw the opportunity that was actually sitting right in front of me. He didn't need to be forced into a supervisor role that no longer fit who he was. He needed a different seat. I moved him into the sales and pre construction management, running the design team, the exact role that I'd personally been holding since we built that division. It fit him immediately for the same reason that he'd been a strong supervisor in the first place. He had real ownership instinct, and clients could feel it. We backfilled his old supervisor role with somebody new, and for the first time, design coordination and sales strategy had a real home outside of me. That taught me something that I carried into every seat after it. A fit problem isn't always a training problem. Sometimes the person is right and the seat is wrong. And the fix isn't pushing harder on the mold, it's finding where they actually belong. The production side still had a structural problem underneath the individual one. Our field supervisors were running roughly 75% field time, 25% office, buyouts, cost tracking, coordination with sales and design. As the business got more complex, that 25% started to matter far more than it used to. Some of you have heard me talk before about an HVAC estimate that came back double what we had budgeted on a fixed priced home, and that's the kind of moment that forces issues like this. It becomes undeniable that you need real internal controls, purchase orders, consistent change orders, financial tracking that holds up when a job is still running and not just after it's finished. So the role needed to shift towards 50-50, office to field, and we separated it into two distinct positions: project managers and project supervisors. I sat in the project manager seat myself for about a year, building it out until it was a real, repeatable 40-hour a week job before we hired other project managers to take over. That year taught me something specific about shared resources. Things like internal crews, designers, subcontractors, vendors. Without somebody managing the whole department, those resources didn't get distributed fairly. They would get taken by whoever pushed hardest for them, regardless of whose job actually needed them more. And that's when I understand that we needed tighter calendar systems, stronger PO and change order processes, and one person with final say on where those resources went, because that person was responsible for the health of the whole department, not just whichever job was loudest that week. After spending a few years in the project manager seat on the production side of our business, the seat that I ended up sitting in the longest by far was in operations. Sales, design, and production all had defined roles underneath them now, so my job shifted more to looking across all of it, finding inefficiencies, building compensation strategy, protecting service standards, and trying to pull risk out of every seat underneath me. This is the stage where you think that you finally arrived. You've delegated real work, you've got people in seats, and now you're just optimizing the machine from above. It feels like control, finally, after the chaos of the stage before it. Here's the problem that nobody warns you about. When your title covers systems, HR, admin, production, and sales all at once, you stop having one lane. You now have 5 lanes, and whichever one is the loudest this week is the one that wins your attention. The squeaky wheel gets the grease every time, no matter how good your intentions are when you were going in. One year, I decided that it was finally going to be the year that I fixed our financial reporting. Not just a P&L and L and a balance sheet. I wanted a real set of reports that I could actually use to find problems in the business and correct them before they became expensive. Part of the project was building a sales report that would let me project revenue on a rolling monthly basis, something that we didn't really have at the time. To build it, I pulled our historical sales data to model the format, and that's when I saw it. We hadn't sold a new job in over 2 months. Here's what made that number so dangerous. It was invisible practically everywhere else. In construction, your production team is executing on jobs that were sold months earlier. So a 2 month gap in new sales doesn't show up as a 2 month gap in revenue. It shows up as a cliff months later when the production team runs out of jobs to build and there's nothing behind them in the pipeline. I hadn't noticed the slowdown because the trucks were still busy, the crews were still working, the revenue was still coming in from work that had been sold back when things were healthy. The report I'd built to fix one problem had just uncovered a completely different one hiding in plain sight. I had a salesperson on staff, but their job was selling, not building sales strategy or diagnosing why the pipeline had gone quiet. So everything I'd been working on got dropped immediately. And I spent the rest of that year rebuilding sales documents and fixing the estimating process instead. The financial reporting project that I committed to at the start of the year ironically never happened because it was killed by the very report that it was built to be a part of. This is when it hit me. This wasn't a failure of discipline, it was structural. I couldn't give any single function my full attention as long as I was the shared safety net underneath all of the functions at once. No amount of personal willpower fixes that. The role itself was the problem. Now, this is the exact moment that a lot of construction companies land in. Too big to keep running informally, and not yet big enough to comfortably afford a real leadership team to take these functions off your plate individually. It's an uncomfortable place to sit because there's no clean answer waiting for you there. Just a decision you eventually have to make. This is the point where the employee versus entrepreneur question stops being theoretical and starts becoming a question that's actually in front of you. For us, this started around $5 million in annual revenue, though I tell you not to fixate on that specific number. Revenue is a rough signal, but what matters more is how many seats you're managing. And I mean, not just employees on payroll, but every relationship that requires your active oversight, subcontractors and vendors included. Historically, this crisis point tends to show up somewhere in the range of 25 to 50 managed seats because that's the point at which the individual efforts of one person can't reliably sustain all of the relationships that are needed to run that level of organization. And once you're there, here's the math. Your business becomes more valuable directly proportional to the degree that it stops needing you. And that can happen at any number: 1 million, 5 million, 25 million, or even more. The revenue number and scale that you want to take your business to is wholly up to you, But what is not up to you is this: if you want that business to become valuable, you can't be a pivotal part of its current level of success. If it can't create profit, grow organically and sustainably, and provide value to somebody else without your direct involvement, you're still an employee of a business that you own. This whole time, I thought I was doing everything that I needed to be a business owner: creating new seats, delegating responsibility, allowing others to have autonomy over the tasks that they manage. But I had to ask myself, was I growing my business to be something that would operate without me, or was I just creating new roles for myself that still bottleneck growth through me? The answer realistically was no. I was still the business's system of record, even though my title changed every few years, because my attention was more focused on scaling and creating new seats rather than creating the core processes required for it to run at its current level. All the standard systems that we've discussed in this podcast — sales, human resources, finance, administration, marketing, standard operating systems, and client retention systems — were all weaker than they should have been, and therefore, the business still required me to hold all of those pieces together. At some point, you have to make the tough choice to benchmark your service, create systems that allow it to run at that level, and let those systems run without you before they create real value. You need to answer: who is your target customer? What is your niche? What value do we create that's unique to us? And ultimately, how do I attract new customers through the answers to those questions? If the target is always moving because you, the business owner, are the business system of record, you'll never have time to answer those questions, and your business will slowly require more and more of your time and effort, regardless of the title that you give yourself and what responsibilities you delegate to others. Many $10 million businesses are run by a very dedicated owner that ultimately can't be sold because there's nothing to sell except for the assets and a company name. It can't be handed to the next generation because there's nothing to hand over that survives their absence. Every bit of its worth is trapped inside that person personally showing up every single day. Conversely, there are plenty of $1 million businesses with great processes, great people, and reliable revenue from dedicated systems that investors would pay many multiples above their annual net profits for, simply because they don't require years of work to stabilize. That's the real test to run on yourself. If you stop showing up tomorrow, does your business survive or does it stop? If the honest answer is that it stops, no title, no revenue number, and no truck count changes what that actually means. You haven't built the thing yet. You've just built a very demanding version of whatever job you've given yourself. So, where does that leave you listening to this right now? Forget trying to place yourself on some framework. Ask yourself something more direct. The same question that I asked myself: if you stop showing up tomorrow, not for a day, but for good, does the business survive or does it stop? If the honest answer is that it stops, here's where to look first. Count every seat you personally cover right now, not just the ones that have your title on them. The decisions that quietly funnel through you, the relationships only you can manage, the questions your team still brings to your desk instead of solving themselves. In construction specifically, count your subcontractor relationships alongside your actual employees. If you're managing 40 active subs and 8 people on payroll, you're not an 8-person operation. You're managing something closer to 50 seats, and that's a real organization that needs real systems that need to survive without you. Now, you need to make a decision, and this will be one of the hardest decisions that you can make. What are you really trying to get out of growing this business past its current level? Is it a better work life balance? Is it financial freedom? Is it legacy? Is it prestige? Or is it something else entirely? There's no wrong answer to that question, and there's no version of it that requires you to build the biggest possible company. What matters is that whatever you're chasing — freedom, legacy, impact, prestige, or just a normal life with a business attached to it — it has to be something the business can deliver without you personally supplying it every single day. Here's the thing that nobody tells you about all of this: work life balance, financial freedom, community impact, legacy. You can find real versions of every one of those at almost any scale. A $1 million business that runs on real systems can hand its owner more freedom than a $10 million business that still runs off of its owner's back. Scale was never the goal, independence was. But here's the part that keeps this from being simple: every scale you build to has a ceiling, and you're going to hit it. It's the point where the systems that you just got done perfecting have stopped being enough and where the next level of growth demands another round of what got you here in the first place. Reinvestment, chaos, long nights, the exact kind of grind that you were trying to build your way out of. And when you hit that ceiling, you have to make a real decision, honestly, and every single time. Has this level already given me what I actually set out for, or do I want to pay the price for the next one? There's no shame in either answer. The shame is only in not asking the question, in growing past a ceiling by accident, dragged along by momentum or ego, without ever checking whether it's actually something that you wanted to get into to begin with. So here's the real question underneath this whole episode. If you're going to remain the system forever, at whatever scale you choose to land on, what did you actually gain by owning the business instead of working for somebody else? You took on all of the risk. You lost your weekends. Staying the system is safe and it's a familiar choice. It's also the one that guarantees that you'll never actually get to enjoy what you've built. Becoming an entrepreneur isn't a title that you get handed on day one. It's a seat that you earn. The one you can finally sit in once the business can run at whatever scale you choose without you standing in the middle of it holding everything up. This episode is really the setup for everything else in this series. We've named the problem. From here on forward, we're going to get practical about actually solving it. The roles a growing builder needs first, how to document work so it doesn't live only in your head, how to delegate without losing control, and how to build something that outlives you. Next episode, we'll start with the first 3 roles that every growing builder needs and how to know when you're actually ready to build them. Thanks for listening to Brickonomics, and I'll see you in the next one.